When elites think about human nature, they look in the mirror and they assume that other people are as selfish as they are. But that's not the case. Power corrupts, but most people are pretty decent.
I mean, what have you thought looking at our current state of being in Britain during the coronavirus lockdown? I mean, we're in sort of really uncharted territory. Some people would have predicted chaos, that there'd be mass civil disobedience. There's no way people would live by the rules for more than a week or two. That people would be angry. Hasn't really happened.
It reminded me so much of what happened in Britain on the eve of the Second World War. So before the bombs started falling on London and other cities in the UK, elites were really panicking. They thought, you know what, people are going to go nuts. The Germans will break the British morale very quickly, and then the population will panic, and the army will have its hands full controlling the masses, right? They can't even fight the enemy because they'll be too busy at home. That was the fear that people like Churchill really had. Then what happened is that the bombs did start falling, and the opposite happened. The keep calm and carry on spirit came over London and other cities, right? There was this wonderful British humor and jokes. There were sort of the buildings destroyed in cafes and restaurants, and people would put out signs in front of them that said more open than usual. And it didn't have a big impact on the economy. Actually, war production increased. And then the question was, how do we explain this? Because especially in 1942, the experts had to decide, what are we going to do with our Air Force, right? Are we going to bomb the Germans, the cities, or focus on strategic targets, railroads, or, I don't know, industry or something like that? And so they thought that the response from the British population was typically British. It was the British spirit, that must be the explanation. But the Germans, well, obviously they were, had a very weak moral character, so it would be easy to break their spirit. And then they bombed Germany 10 times as heavily as Britain. And, exactly the same thing happened again. The cities that were bombed the heaviest actually became more resilient and saw increased wartime production compared to cities that were not bombed or not bombed as heavy. Because it wasn't British culture, it was human nature. This is just how people behave during times of crisis. They pull together. So now we have seen this epidemic, the corona crisis, and it's literally the same playbook. It's again, Downing Street and the experts saying, you know what, people will get tired of this. There will be this fatigue, with the lockdown. And that was one of the reasons why the UK was slow to go into lockdown, because they thought the public couldn't handle it. And look what it has cost us, in terms of lives. So this is the problem over and over again. When elites think about human nature, they look in the mirror and they assume that other people are as selfish as they are. But that's not the case. Power corrupts, but most people are pretty decent.